This episode is sponsored by lynda.com. Easy to follow video tutorials help you learn software, business, and creative skills. Go to lynda.com to learn more. Welcome back to Android Weekly. My name is Jayce. In this past week, the world of Android experienced tectonic shifts. That's right, Google sold Motorola Mobility to Lenovo. And Samsung and Google cooked up some sort of a deal that means I won't be able to get to see that magazine UX I was so looking forward to.
I'll still be here for you, Jayce.
Thank you. Do you know anything about this deal that we don't by chance?
I know your search history shows you love Justin Bieber.
Shut up! Yes, that's right. For those of you who haven't heard, Google sold Motorola Mobility to Lenovo for $2.91 billion. And I asked in last week's Android Q&A for your take on that. How and why did that happen? And I got some pretty interesting responses. It's 8 Shot says, Google is going bonkers. Jack Johnson goes even further because Samsung got butthurt and Google had to sell Moto to make babies that Samsung stopped crying and messing around with Android.
Not even I can translate that.
We also had many intelligent responses. One was from Akshay Paul. Akshay talked about the hardware patents, the need to protect their hardware partners, and also the need not to compete with those partners. Miguel Gonzalez also has some great points that I talk about here in the show. But the t-shirt goes to Kyle, because Kyle brought up a point that not many others did. Google wants to limit the threat of Samsung leaving Android for Tizen or other operating systems. Congratulations, Kyle. I'll be in touch with you shortly and you can give us your address and t-shirt size. Now, I told you all I would give you my take, and it goes a little something like this. Number one is that Motorola was bleeding money. As much as everyone at Android Authority loved the Moto X and the Moto G, the mainstream was clearly just not taking to it. I mean, there was very few sales. Last year alone, they lost boatloads of money. Next up is that patent price. On the surface, Google lost almost $9 billion, but you need to remember that Google also sold Motorola Home and Motorola Set-Top Box to offset that loss. So the patent cost was really about $4 billion when you work out all the math. Still bad, but not quite as bad as $9 billion. So thirdly, Google has 15,000 patents from Motorola. How can they make $4 billion worth of money to make that all worthwhile? I think it works something like this. So now when people say Google is using those patents to protect Android, what does that mean and how does it work? It works like this. Google is able to create licensing deals with their hardware partners that makes money. Now, it doesn't make a lot of money, but the real money comes from the fact that those hardware partners are now freer to create more Android devices, more Android users, because they don't have the same threat of frivolous lawsuits from Apple. All those increased Android users makes more money for Google. That is the hope, that is the strategy. Or as a programmer, Robert Eric Raymond, put more bluntly, this is Google telling Apple, you want to play silly buggers with junk patents? Bring it on, we'll countersue you into oblivion. Now, no one knows if these patents will actually work as intended, including Google, but it does act as a deterrent, and hopefully it will force Apple to the table to negotiate a long-term licensing deal. Now for some wild guesses. Emphasis on the guesses. China. That's right. The Chinese government owns a meaningful stake in Lenovo. And China and Google had a spat in the past about China wanted to censor Google's search engine in China, but Google was having none of that. Now, is it possible that Google sold Motorola Mobility to Lenovo on the cheap in the hopes of softening the relationship with the Chinese government and getting further into the Chinese market?
Oh, that's so juicy.
Yes, it is. But we must remember that China has invested a lot of money in alternative operating systems, so that idea may be bunk, we don't know. So you remember that magazine UX we saw from Samsung at CES that I thought was so encouraging? Not gonna happen. Citing multiple sources familiar with the company's thinking, the report says Google coaxed Samsung to consider dumping or altering the magazine UX interface for upcoming devices. It's not known yet what Google had to concede in order to get the Korean company to accept such change, but the concession is probably offloading Motorola. Furthermore, there are rumors that one of the results of this deal is the death of the Nexus Line. According to Eldar Murtazin, the Nexus Line by Google is over in 2015. Yes, this line will be replaced by Play Edition. Now, it should be said here that Eldar does not have a perfect record when it comes to leaks, but I gotta tell you, my gut tells me he's right. We're only gonna see Google Play Edition phones No more Nexus in the years to come. Thank you for watching again, Android Army. There was more news items that I didn't have time to get to, but I've linked to them in below. There's great stuff about the HTC One successor, the LG G2 Pro. There's good stuff down there. Check it out. You don't want to forget about my brothers in Android, Josh, Joe, and the Tech Ninja Kevin. Please connect with me here on Google Plus and Twitter. I read all of them and I answer as many as I can. And also remember that we have 2 shows of Android Q&A coming up this week. Put your questions in the comments below. I will read all of them and try and find the best ones to put in this week's show. Talk to you then.